Dirt-eater mask. Geophagy was moderately normal among slaves in the 16th–19th hundreds of years. Many had gotten the propensity in West Africa, where geophagy was far-reaching to such an extent that supported assortments of earth were even accumulated and exchanged. Slave proprietors guessed this training was unfortunate and were told by doctors that it would give their slaves despondency, stomachaches, dropsy, poor craving, brevity of breath, and thus, trying to ensure their property, slave proprietors furnished the earth-eaters with upsetting, mouth-blocking veils that they needed to wear, even while working in sticky, hazardously hot conditions. Turns out, there's no genuine agreement on whether moderate geophagy is unsafe. Thus, this purported fix was only torment. These covers may likewise have been intended to keep slaves from expending the yields they gathered. Madame Rowley's toilet mask. Other than hawking bogus expectation, there's nothing inalienably vile about this veil. In any case, it has a Hannibal Lecter-like appearance that certainly draws out the wet blanket factor. Madame Rowley's Ken mask was a Marvel treatment during the 1890s that vowed to improve, fade, and protect the composition of the wearer. Madame Rowley thought there was genuine science behind her creation and even had it protected. As per the patent, clients were to put the veil on while they rested and permit sweat to mellow and explain the skin by easing the pores and the shallow course. To us, it appears to be a decent method to get a pruny confront and perhaps build up a skin growth. Splatter masks. Despite the fact that these covers resemble some sort of medieval torment gadget, they were really worn for assurance by British tank administrators at the 1917 Battle of Cambrai in World War I, one of the principal significant tank fights in history. Back at that point, tank designing was in its earliest stages, and the vehicles weren't so imposing as they are today. They just moved about as quick as an individual could walk, separated continually, and could be obliterated with overwhelming big guns. This implied anybody inside the tank was profoundly powerless to gunfire, red-hot shards of metal, and other shrapnel. Much under light fire, the tank would spit bolts and chips of lead paint at the tenants' appearances. The calfskin and chainmail veils filled in as the face's last line of safeguard against this blast of slugs and explosions. Incidentally, the Germans were from the start profoundly scared by the huge tanks and, without a doubt, the concealed drivers. Yet, in the wake of perceiving how inadequate the tanks were, the Germans mocked them, thus didn't build up their own tanks until some other time in the war. Baby gas masks. While gas covers on grown-ups are dreadful enough, they're not even close as spooky as child gas veils. Truth be told, the World War I and II infant forms looked increasingly like head protectors, which gave the newborn children a scuba-jumping outsider appearance. Also, it's simply discouraging we face a daily reality such that babies really need gas veils. On the off chance that these things look unfathomably lumbering, that is on the grounds that they were. For the gadget to work, a grown-up needed to ceaselessly push the manual pneumatic machine, something that appears as though it is hard to do in a province of emergency. In the US, youngsters were given Mickey Mouse gas veils. In spite of the fact that these covers should be less terrifying for kids, they are apparently more nightmarish than the ordinary forms. We simply envision a group of youngsters wearing these and gazing us down with their clear, glass eyes. In expansion to covers appropriate for each man, lady, and kid, there were likewise forms for Fido. Truly, even canines must be all set in to fight under any conditions. Besides, having a total arrangement of human and pet veils made for some really cool family photographs. Death masks. Possibly the reality the mortar once encased a dead individual's head, or that we're seeing the appearance of a dormant face. However, whatever the explanation, demise covers are absolute freaky, yet they have been very well known since the beginning. The act of making passing covers has been around since old occasions and was regular well into the 20th century. Individuals utilized them as models for chiseling, for measurable purposes, for strict functions, and basically as keepsakes. Perhaps the most seen cover is of L'Inconnue de la Seine, of unidentified lady who was pulled out of the River Seine during the 1880s. She was ventured to have suffocated. Her passing veil turned into a well-known enhancement in privileged French drawing rooms and was later utilized as a model for the substance of CPR sham resuscitation. Consequently, endless individuals have unconsciously offered mouth-to-mouth to the picture of a dead French woman. It's fitting that the obscure suffocating casualty has spared countless others from a similar destiny. Alexander Peyton's mask. In 1663, Presbyterian Sir Alexander Peyton ended up on the run from the Scottish government. What did the great pastor do to jump on an inappropriate side of the law? All things considered, he wouldn't stop lecturing when King Charles II cancelled Presbyterianism and demanded that administration-authorized Episcopalian religious administrators needed to endorse all clergymen. Rather than keeping the law and supporting the king's move towards Scottish restoration, Peyton lectured in private houses, fields, and other mystery areas. Such conduct was viewed as rebellious, and Peyton before long got one of Scotland's most needed men. To keep away from Ketch, Peyton brought forth an arrangement that currently appears to be absolutely silly, however shockingly, really worked, in any event, for a brief period. The arrangement comprised of concealing his notable face behind a texture veil enhanced with red whiskers, wig, wooden teeth, and plumes around the eye cuts, eyelashes, possibly. Perhaps the most astounding component of this story is that his supporters evidently wouldn't fret getting strict educating from somebody who looked more like an evil presence than a prophet. Peyton kept lecturing in this sickening getup until he was at long last caught in 1673. He at that point went through longer than 10 years in different detainment facilities, was ousted to America, and in the long run advanced back to Scotland, where he kicked the bucket sequestered from everything. Masks of shame. Schandmasks, or disgrace veils, were a German type of discipline utilized in the 17th and 1800s of years. It's difficult to judge whether they're progressively unconventional or frightening, yet they certainly inspire a shocking inclination when you'd discover individuals had to wear them for just disregarding paltry social standards, for example, tattling, making grimy wisecracks, or some other social violation of social norms. While the overwhelming iron cover was positively convoluted, the central matter of the training was to embarrass the guilty party, however much as could be expected. Thusly, the covers were frequently made to look or sound senseless and give people a thought of the person's transgression. For example, some had jackass ears to connote a dolt, long tongues to speak to a gossiper, or monster pig noses to demonstrate the individual was filthy. Some even made whistling sounds each time the wearer breathed out, a lot to the delight of onlookers. On top of that, the criminal was then driven into the stocks, where they were exposed to the insults, sneers, and perhaps bad tomatoes of bystanders. A portion of the veils additionally had an iron piece, which squeezed awkwardly down on the tongue of the guilty party. Before being drilled in Germany, it appears this specific type of misuse was roused by the British reproof's harness, a comparable type of discipline for the most part utilized on ladies. Vintage Halloween masks. These days, Halloween veils are generally superheroes or old presidents, and even the supposed terrifying ones are latex, mass-created, and fairly unsurprising. To see the really alarming covers, we have to think back 70 to 100 years prior, when people needed to make their own outfits utilizing just their minds and whatever stuff they had lying around. Vizard mask. On the off chance that you were a lady in the 16th century, it was splendidly adequate to circumvent town with a ghoulish dark veil covering your whole face. These velvet veils, called vizards, were multi-purpose, as they served to both shield the lady's skin from the sun and give her a quality of riddle. Behind the mouth cut, there was a little globule that the lady would nibble to hold the cover set up, successfully making her anonymous and mute. While some may have discovered the impact fascinating, Philip Stubbs, a creator at that point, depicted it by saying that if a man happened to meet one of these dark concealed ladies, he would think he met a beast or a fallen angel. For face he can see none, however two broad gaps against her eyes with glasses in them. We will in general concur with Stubbs. These covers dropped out of design during the 17th century, when the style became related with horse. Possibly men found the veils charming. Iroquois False Face Society Mask. Essentially every indigenous culture has a lot of stricter ceremonial covers, and, from an outside point of view, the greater part of them are at the same time captivating and somewhat alarming. However, none are more scary than the purposely odd, warped-mouthed covers worn by the False Face Society, one of the numerous restorative gatherings inside the Iroquois clans. This general public is utilized as a kind after all other options have run out when none of the other mending social orders can fix a patient. What makes these covers more startling than other inburn covers is they are not unimportant wooden carvings, but rather are viewed as the living exemplification of a soul. All things considered, there is a severe convention in how to think about these wooden bodies. This incorporates every so often blessing the covers with oil and creature oil, taking care of them white corn mush, and consuming tobacco in their honor. Things get truly energizing when the veils are placed without hesitation. Despite the fact that the services are sacrosanct and non-society individuals aren't promptly welcomed, it's said the healers wear the veils and afterward perform rough emulates of evil spirits being removed from the patient's body. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel.